Hey, this is Nevin again with Diskant. I wanted to go ahead and recap on a video that we released like 8 years ago, and that was how to season your cooking disc. Now, a little bit's changed since we've got thousands and thousands of Diskants across the country and in some cases the world, but we've changed some of our manufacturing processes. Now we have the exclusive manufacturing of being able to provide a completely consistent cooking surface. Still made out of a carbon steel product, the 3/16 22-inch diameter disc will allow you to cook anything from steaks and burgers and dogs, a stir fry, and of course your favorite desserts. So first thing you got to do when you get a brand new disc is you got to season it. And again, as you can reference our other video we've had up for about 8 or 9 years, this thing will kind of touch base on it. Just wanted to go ahead and update that a little bit. So learn some different ways of doing that a little bit faster, and the key trick to it is heat, heat, heat. So what I'm going to do here to get started with is I'm going to actually go ahead and turn on the burner of the Diskant, and I'm going to let this thing get super, super hot. Now, safety first. We're going to be dealing with some extreme temperatures with the burner, and we're also going to be dealing with some lard, which is basically some like cooking oil. So you want to be very, very careful as we process this seasoning here. You don't want to get burned, and you don't want to have grease splattering, and you definitely don't want to have any kind of grease fire. Again, we're going to be dealing with some extremely high temperatures while we season the Diskant cooking disc and go from there. So here, I'm always going to turn on my propane tank. I'm going to slowly open up that valve to make sure that there's no restriction on that output. And then on the Diskant, to fire that thing up, you just got to push the knob in, slowly rotate to the left, and click, light it up. So what I'm going to do, as we talked about high heat, I'm actually going to go ahead and leave this. Of course, I'm going to supervise it for safety, but I want this thing to get as hot as I can get it. We're going to let it run for about 8 or 10 minutes, and we're going to see if we can get a quick close-up, and we can see how the steel itself is actually going to start changing color. The way the disc works, even like cast iron, is you actually want to get that hot because the steel is actually going to expand with heat. You can't see it, but the steel has lots of pores, just like your skin does. So with extreme heat, we're going to go ahead and open up those pores in that steel, let it expand, and we're going to apply some, in this case, I like to use lard. You can use vegetable oil, or some people use flaxseed oil. There's a bunch of ways to do it. My favorite is lard. So I'm going to go ahead and let this get super, super hot. I'm going to apply some of that, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. And then we're going to, as we keep working it, then we'll go ahead and let it cool down, and then we're going to do it again. So this will take you about good 15-20 minutes to get an initial seasoning done, and the more you use it, the more it's going to season. So this is a good way to get to know your Diskant and your new cooking disc. Get it seasoned, cook anything on it. So we're going to let that heat up for a little bit. We'll come back and when it gets nice and hot. So now we've got the burner. The disc has been sitting on the burner for about 3 or 4 minutes, whatever, on high heat. You can see how the steel is actually starting to take color. You'll see some different colors of blues and browns. That's actually just getting super, super hot. So we're actually going to let that sit for a little bit while longer, and then we're going to start adding the lard to it. Eventually, you want to get this whole thing totally discolored, and we'll start working it in. So the carbon steel is actually expanding with all that extreme heat. So as I mentioned before, the steel has pores like your skin does. With the heat, it actually opens up the pores as it expands, and we're going to go ahead and start applying some lard in there. Now this process is actually going to create quite a bit of smoke. And we're only going to add a little bit of lard at a time because we don't want to have grease splattering all over the place. We don't want to have any kind of mess, and I also don't want to have any kind of burns. The other thing to mention is that we're cooking at some pretty extreme temperatures here, so you want to be careful. You do not want to have any kind of a grease fire. So here I'm just using a Morel snow cap lard. Again, some people prefer to use vegetable oil or other kind of things. My particular preference is just this snow cap lard. So I'm going to take about 2 tablespoons or so. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the disc. Then I'm going to crumble up some paper towels. Now take a look at how much smoke is coming off of that already. Super, super extreme heat. Be very, very careful as you do this because of the heat. So here I'm going to add the towels in here, and I'm just going to swirl this around. Now this is actually going to burn away. We're going to have to add a little bit more at a time. But as you can see what we're doing here, this is going to basically start turning black. Now when you have a finished disc, you want to have it super, super black and a nice, nice sheen finish. So you can see it's already starting to turn nice and black in that hottest part of the disc right there. So getting to know your disc as you run this thing around, you get a feel for how cooking is going to be with it. So the more you season it, the better it's going to be. Now keep in mind, every single time you use your disc, you're actually going to be seasoning it a little bit more as well. The key trick to the disc is never ever want to put any soap in it, just like cast iron. So when you clean it, and we'll get into that separately with another video here shortly on cleaning the disc itself, but I'm just continuously wiping all that around. Now it's easiest to do the very center part of the disc right away. Over time it'll get nice and black all the way to the edges. If you want to spend some extra time with it, you can actually position the disc on the burner kind of at an angle where the heat's closer to the edge. You want to be very careful in doing so because now you're dealing with a disc that might be out of balance. There's a couple reasons why you want to season this thing, and it's really important to season your disc as soon as you get it. The disc is made out of carbon steel, so just like a carbon steel wok or just like a cast iron skillet or so on, you want to make sure you season that right away so you don't have any rust potential. The seasoning is also going to help your disc be a non-stick surface, so the more you season it and the better that surface is, the better your cooking is going to be. So get that seasoned, and then every time you're done with cooking, and we'll get into cleaning as well, but you always want to apply a light coat of some kind of cooking oil on it every time you're done using it. Eventually you want to get the entire thing, as I mentioned, nice and seasoned, nice black sheen. Here's a quick example of my personal disc, how perfectly seasoned that is. So the more you use it, the more it's going to season and the better it's going to cook. So spend that time with your cooking disc, get to know it, and cook anything and everything. Don't forget about checking out all the hundreds of different recipes and videos on the Diskant website. Thanks for watching and teaching you how to season your cooking disc, and thanks for choosing Diskant. Cooking outdoors has never been better. Diskant.